Hey all, today we are going to start our next unit, and we're going to be talking about greatest common factors, which is something we have talked about this year already, but it's a good time to do a little review. Remember that factors are things that multiply to be something else. So I gave an example in class, I think maybe it was 12. I can come up with things that multiply to be 12. So I could say 3 times 4. I could say 1 times 12. I could say 2 times 6. And all these numbers are factors of 12. They're numbers that you can use to multiply to get to 12. So what we want to do is figure out what are the things that we multiply together to get this, this expression. And so we're going to look at each term, anything separated by a plus or a minus, and we're going to say, we're first going to look at the numbers. And we're going to say, what number can I divide both of these by? What number can I divide 5 and 15 by? And what we're looking for specifically is that G, that greatest, the greatest common factor. So the biggest number we can multiply 5 and 15 by. Well, we can divide. We can divide them both by 5. And so that's going to be part of my greatest common factor. And then I'm going to look at the variables. They both have p's. I have a p to the third and a p to the second. And so I want to say, what is the greatest number of p's that I can take away from both of them? Well, I can take 2 away from here, and I can take 2 away from here. So the greatest number of p's I have are 2. And so now I want to rewrite this with the factors. 5p to the second power, that's one factor. And then we're going to divide each of these by 5p to the second. So this is a good review of dividing polynomials. So when I divide these 5s, it just cancel. P to the third over p to the second just becomes p. So I'm going to write that there. We have a plus. 15 divided by 5 is 3. P to the second divided by p to the second, those cancel. And so I'm left with this. So these are 2 factors of this expression. They're 2 things. If I actually multiplied them back out, if I did this distributing, which I'm not going to do right now, it would turn back into what we started with. So I'm going to skip this part where I actually write GCF, and I'm just going to put the division under here. Underneath here, I'm going to put the thing that I can divide them both by. Let's look at the numbers first. I can divide both of these by 6. And I'm going to say negative 6. This term has a v, but this term doesn't have anything, so I can't divide by any letters. So my greatest common factor is negative 6. I lied. I'm going to write it over here. And so now I want to rewrite this. Negative 6 is one of my factors, so I'm going to start with that. Parentheses, because we're multiplying. Factors are things that multiply to be something else. And I'm going to divide these. Negative 6 divided by negative 6, well, those cancel. And I have a v left over. Negative 18 divided by negative 6. Again, as I always say, if you struggle with this, feel free to use Desmos to help you out. Negative 18 divided by negative 6 is positive 3. And there we have it. These are the 2 factors of negative 6v minus 18. If I were to multiply these back out, distribute, multiply negative 6 times v and negative 6 times 3, I would be back where I started. We're going to be doing a bunch of factoring. This is just the first step of our factoring for this unit. Let me do one more, and then I'll have you try one. Here I'm going to try and find out what do all of these have in common. I'll look at the numbers first, then I'll assess letters. That's just the order which I go. The biggest number I can divide 10 by is 10. I can also divide 40 by 10. I can divide 50 by 10. So that's going to be part of my greatest common factor. That's the biggest number I can divide them all by. And then this has an x squared, this one has an x, and the other one doesn't have any letters. So I can't divide them all by x. So I'm not going to have x in my greatest common factor. So 10 is my greatest common factor. So when I write the factored version, it's going to be 10 and then parentheses because we're multiplying. Factors are things that multiply. 50 divided by 10 is 5 minus 40 divided by 10 is 4, and there's nothing to divide that x by, so we just write x. 10 divided by 10 is 1, and then we have the x squared left over. And those are our two factors. So I want you to pause right now. I want you to give this one a shot. Start by figuring out what number you can divide negative 18, positive 27, and negative 36 by, and then what you can divide all these x's by. So pause, try this on your own. It's okay if you make a mistake and you don't get it correct. It's your first time trying it alone. And then press play and listen to me give you an answer. So hopefully you figured this out. If you didn't, I hope you see where you found your mistakes. If not, you should definitely raise your hand and ask for some help. I can divide all three of these numbers by 9. That's the biggest number I can divide them all by. X squared. So really what I'm looking for is what is the smallest exponent I have on my variable. They all have an x, and the smallest exponent is x squared. And so I can divide them all by x squared. So that's going to be my first factor. And then I put parentheses because I'm going to be multiplying these. Factors are things that multiply. And I'm going to divide all these out. Negative 18 divided by 9 is negative 2. X to the 6th divided by x to the 2nd, that's x to the 4th. 27 divided by 9 is 3. X to the 5th by x squared is x to the 3rd. Negative 36 divided by 9 is negative 4. And these x squareds cancel. And this is our final factored version of this polynomial expression. If we were to multiply this again, distribute, we would end up back where we started. So as always, if you do have questions about how to do this, make sure that you ask. I'm going to have some questions here before you finish this lesson that I'm going to ask you to answer. Make sure you answer those questions to get full credit. And then, of course, practice is the best way to get better at this. You want to get better at this before we move to the next step. So make sure you do some practice. And as ever, if you get stuck, you can use Desmos and ask for help. So make sure you answer the questions associated with these 4 problems, and good luck.